dozen resumes. Great. What I was doing this morning is I reviewed a couple dozen resumes for an automation engineer position, AI forward company in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I reviewed about a couple dozen resumes this morning. And here's a perfect example of one. I've got, I had over 91 applicants apply. I didn't even promote the role. It was open a couple days. This candidate looks great. I look at this resume, senior SDET, 9 years of experience, scalable automation frameworks, right? I see the buzzwords here. I come down and I can see, developed automation regression suite. I can see, the stats here, right? I can see he led the team. I can see he executed hands-on. This looks like a good technical lead. There's nothing wrong. I can drop this resume here later so you can take a look. I'd love you guys to compare this resume to yours because where I'm standing from, if I'm not technical, I'm looking at this resume and I'm looking at 30 other resumes that look just like this. And that I think is an issue. And when I look on paper, like this looks like a solid person, experienced, real enterprise work. Here's some notes, real enterprise work, automation experience, CI/CD, agile, you got API, you got regression testing, etc. There's nothing wrong with this. But what happens when I see 50 resumes that look just like this, they all start to blur together. And it's not because candidates are the same, but because of the way the experience is described starts to feel the same. So I mulled it over a little bit this morning, and I'm thinking that the real issue is function versus identity. So what most resumes end up doing is describing functions. I worked on automation. I supported CI/CD pipelines. I ran regression testing. And the problem is in enterprise QA, especially, these functions are incredibly common. Same tools, same environment, same language, same type of digital transformation initiatives, right? And it all becomes to look the same. So it's not because it's a bad experience, but because nothing's standing out as either distinct ownership or product context or anything to say, hey, this person, I should pick up the phone and call this person now. And I think that's kind of the missing layer. So what I would like to do, this is one of the resumes out of 30. They all look the same. What I'd like to do is kind of look at an example here, resume makeover. I'll go ahead and I'll throw this into the chat for anybody who wants to follow along. I think crafting your story is really unique. The goal of the resume, everyone and their mom seems to have an opinion about the resume nowadays. The goal is simply to get the interview, get the conversation, and that's it. If you're getting phone calls, it's working. So when I say before and after, what changes isn't just like the technical content, it's clarity around ownership, impact, scope, business context. You may understand your experience perfectly, and the question really is, can somebody who's not technical understand in 15 seconds, right? You've written your resume really, really great. The resume we showed candidates see, very well written for a hiring manager, a technical manager to review, not necessarily the gatekeeper. So if you toggle over to this page, you'll see some key questions here. What I really want to do is go down and focus on the before and after. This resume is very similar in my mind to the one that I just saw, to the other 30 resumes I just saw. You got an automation engineer. They do test, automation engineer project development. I see all the regular buzzwords. I'm not technical, so this all looks the same to me. Core skills and expertise, great. Looks like they have the modern tech stack that the other candidate did too when I'm looking at the tech stack, right? I see no differences. Ally Financial, yes, as I'm looking at the resume, I'm looking at things like, how did they write the objective section? What did they do in their last role? What are the industries that they have experience with? And then what are the products? And like I said earlier, the reality is a lot of folks are working on similar initiatives across domains. So I'm looking at this and I see some bolded stuff. Bolding worked, 5 years ago, but once ChatGPT came in, I can't tell if this is written by the person, right, or written by an LLM. That's one thing that stands out. I see a lot of Cypress. I see enhanced MR processes and physical devices, but I really see no clarity around like the type of product or, a real initiative that they ran that really differentiates themselves from anybody else I just looked at, and it looks all the same. So when I toggle over to the right-hand side, what I like to think about is, well, how do recruiters look at resumes? They take less than 10 seconds to see if you're worth another 30 seconds, to see if you're then worth another minute or two to put in their shortlist pile as they're reviewing, 100 plus resumes that day, right? I want to look and see, hey, where do recruiters really focus their time? I look at typically every recruiter operates differently, but typically how I've seen my peers operate in the community has been, they look at the professional summary. They don't really look at the technical experience. I care about what's in the meat of the resume. If you can't see it, you can't count it. I'm not technical enough. I'm probably control Fing the resume to see if they've got, JavaScript or TypeScript experience, because I can't understand that somebody that's using Angular is building using TypeScript, right? Etc. So I'm toggling over to the meat of the role, and I'm looking to see, is what they're saying in their skills section represented in the meat of the description. Usually the first few bullet points are representation of what the person did the most, and the last few bullet points are what they did the least. I'm not saying what I'm saying is right. I'm just saying how I've seen recruiters operate. So one of the couple things that we did to really make this person stand out is I put some passion in the summary. This resume that's written on the right side got a lot of traction, and most of it was written with ChatGPT going back and forth. But I brought life into this person and passion if you compare the professional summaries. We've got the core skills right here. These are all the same to me. I changed it around. We put it as technical edge. So anybody that's a recruiter that doesn't know programming languages, frameworks, etc., JavaScript and TypeScript is my game, right? It's very clear already. Then I can come to Ally Financial and I can see how I've crafted the story. It's not just changing the bullet points around to illustrate different initiatives this person led. You're not a one-trick, QA engineer. You handle many things, right? So how do you really determine what you want to put forth? And I normally look at it by business context. Love to see business initiatives of products, any type of department information, anything to make you stand out is great. But this person led a lot. So what we did is we took, the main initiatives that they led, and we talked more about it. I condensed the bullet points and we just talked about this stuff. And then here is where I gave the story piece, right? That's going to be different than anybody else who's going to apply to this role. Brought into Architect Cypress automation from scratch, building a framework that slashed manual testing and sped up delivery, from leading the migration to integrating GMAX auto platform and rolling out features like smart alerts and transaction tracking, right? It gives more of a story on the type of initiative the person led, the business department, really what they're working on. And I think that really helps people stand out. So this was one part that I wanted to make it clear. I think really when you're looking at applying, I look at twofold: applying to positions with the resume. And I'm very much a promoter of outreach, right? So the resume isn't always going to get it done. But the point of the resume is just to get the phone call. And if I'm looking at 30 resumes, they all look the same, I'm going to take the second one because this tells more of a story. I'm happy to take questions here, but this was really the first piece that I wanted to cover.
I have a question for this one. Since it's a lot of information, would that, because usually you prefer to have like one-page resume, right? Because this is so much verbose, right? Do you prefer, or how does it work out?
The point is just to get the phone call. So, I have people saying, hey, 1-page resume, hey, 2, don't make it more than 3. I would say probably in the last 10 years, the last 5 to 7 years of experience is really what people are looking at. So when I look at my resume, the first thing I do is I write everything out. I want to see kind of what my experience really is what I'm working with. But I really want to focus on the last 5 to 7 years. So I don't really have a rule of thumb when it comes to resumes. I don't normally make it more than 3 pages. I don't think you need to. For example, you can see this person, they worked at Ally. They worked at Red Ventures. They worked at Garrettson as a business analyst in UAT from 2015 to 2017. This is great experience, but this is not only great experience, but this set this person up very well to couple their project management, manual testing background with automation, right? Like they didn't just get to be an automation engineer. They didn't just wake up this way. But the reality is that like this is not really doing anything for this person who's applying to an automation engineering role. So you have Garson, you got PLS, you got, Johnson Control, you got Walt Disney. And what I did really is I looked to see, hey, what kind of job is this person applying to in an automation engineer role? I don't need to have all of that manual information. What I need to do is spend time looking at the last several years of work and really getting the story nailed down of exactly why you should call me. So you've got Ally Financial here, you've got Red Ventures here. I added Garrettson just because, and I have additional work experience. These are large companies, and I think that highlighting the domain is great, but like I don't highlighting the fact I worked at Walt Disney is fantastic because Walt Disney's brand name, especially if that's the industry that I'm looking to apply to roles at. I want companies to see that I worked there for 6 years, but I don't need them to see the intricacies of what I held. This was, a couple decades ago. So I truncate it. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't have a magic ball here. I normally say 2 to 3.
There is a question from the one of the person. Do recruiters have time to read a summary of each experience?
Every recruiter operates differently. If you find people online that have hot takes and tell you exactly how recruiters work, that's a lie. There's different types of recruiters. Let's talk about them. You got outsourced staffing, you've got internal recruiters, you've got executive RPO searches, you've got retained searches. All these people that have various types of knowledge, different skill sets, all bias. I don't have an answer for that. What I would say is that I typically don't recommend cover letters. Recruiters are really, if they're looking at these resumes manually, it's very quick. I've got a stack of, I had 91 this morning, and I'm literally taking 10 seconds to look through each resume to see, are you worth another 30 seconds of my time to put you in a shortlist pile? So if you think that you've got a summary that really highlights your chair and your business impact that translates to that role, add it. Add the cover letter if you want, but just be mindful of like what you're applying for. When I look at the summary for each experience, not necessarily like for Red Ventures, we left it out because why did we leave it out? Because she was working at Ally for the last 5 years. I don't need to talk about the time at Red Ventures. I want all eyes focused on Ally Financial. If I only got 30 seconds of a recruiter's time, I want them to see my passion in my summary, like move through any of the skills or technical requirements or like, hey, my achievements, right? I want them to beeline to my last gig. I don't know if that's helpful.
Maybe I have a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
As other person asked, so where exactly as a candidate I need to really highlight this summary? I mean, like in the initial starting page of the resume, the objective is where recruiters focus on. I know most of the people tend to write the cover letters in a shorter version, but still, if the recruiter doesn't have a patience, is it like keywords is the main impact or the summary objective is the main impact? As a candidate, where should I really correct myself?
The meat of the role. And this comes from my staff. This comes from outsourced staffing agency experience, working with peers handling high volume. So not everybody works the same. But we are trained to say, if it's not in the meat of the resume, does the person actually do it?
Okay.
That's the philosophy of a lot of my peers. So that being said, I would make a very short objective section that brings energy or life into your resume. And then I would just scratch everything else. And I want that person to beeline to my last experience.
Okay. There's another question from the group.
I have a
As a
question.
QA, I have difficulty quantifying my work. I know that today recruiters like to see numbers. Do you have any suggestions when you don't have numbers to put on your resume? Like impact percentages or something like that. If the candidate doesn't have that kind of situation, what is the best way to really show that kind of impact in the resume?
Yeah, I don't really, I'm thinking that's a really good question.
Yeah. A question from Erika. So, Erika, do you want to speak about it? Where is the challenge you are going through?
Sure. So I know for me, during in my work as a QA, I don't know. For example, I don't know what the number of defects were when I first joined the organization, as opposed to maybe a year after I've joined. So I can't say I've reduced defects by 30% or I've shortened time to production or I've shortened testing time by 50%. I don't have those numbers. I don't know what they are. I don't know how many test cases I'm running. And so, again, I don't work with a budget. So when they ask to see numbers, that's not something that I can provide. And I don't just want to pull something out of thin air. So I do my best to try to say, I did this, which, helped this. but I feel like I'm limited in what I can do with that.
Yeah, that's a good, and I don't actually get that question that often. I the stats, these stats, I my peers like the stats. If you don't have the stats, I think it's fine as long as you can talk a little bit about the either product or department that you supported. So, for example, I think this is the only stat she really has in her resume, but here's an example: led the seamless transition from Ember to React, migrating all web pages while ensuring manual and automated tests were fully updated, optimized, or retired to maintain flawless functionality. Expanded test coverage by integrating with API testing and elevating cross-device mobile testing using Charles Proxy for physical devices for browser and cloud-based compatibility. I don't know if you can see. Can you see my screen with this downloads here? You can see if I can add it in the chat.
Yes.
It is kind of, small. Maybe you should increase the size of the page.
Yeah.
Yep. Right there.
So
I hope everybody can see it now.
Yeah, here's an example. Before building end-to-end automation test flow using Python and Playwright for key POS functionalities and, including item scanning, account discount handling, right? They go through all this stuff, validated UI elements, pin pad interactions, etc. So, I mean, I don't know what you're handling from a QA perspective, Erica, but here's a perfect example of a bullet point that really highlights what this person is doing. And I revised it to make it a little more to split the difference between a technical viewer and a gatekeeper. I don't necessarily need to know that you reduced, tests by 30% or whatever, but here's after rewriting this, it's built end-to-end automation test flow in Python and Playwright across item scanning, discount handling, split tenders, and return so that cashiers and customers hit 0 transaction failures at the register. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm trying to think about what did I do and then how can I revise it to make it short and sweet, to highlight the chair that I had if I don't have specific numbers to call out. Does that make sense or no?
Yes, it makes sense if instead of stats, kind of doing an impact statement format.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would call it, right?
There is other question.
Any product, right? How did it impact, end users? And that's really what I'm focusing on if I don't have stats.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Jacqueline, one last question for this particular phase of your demo. Any recommendations on getting a resume past automatic filters? There must be.
What kind of that's a completely different conversation. I love the question, but there's just so much on LinkedIn about the noise here. How to get the resume past automated filters. I wouldn't worry about that. You have people that have knockout questions. You've got various recruiters that are dabbling with AI sourcing or filtering. But the reality is like I talked to over 100 TA professionals stateside over the last 30 days selling products. And they're telling me in their workflows, they're not using a lot of AI tools for filtering resumes. They're still doing a lot of stuff manually. So I know people are cutting their teeth into this stuff. PromptMates is an excellent community where you can follow along and see how TA leaders are actually adapting. But there's a lot of noise out there. When I look at automated filters, I wouldn't worry about it. I would make sure that your resume at a 70% matches the requirement. I would apply. Then I would go find a recruiter at that company and reach out to them, see if you can't throw yourself on their radar.
I have a quick question. So as you said, like most of the resume tailored is now we are using AI. So, and in fact, like most of the filtration comes before the recruiters see the first track, like the AI checking for the keywords, and then even the all the resumes are looking exactly, almost even the tailored one, the story built one looks similar. So I wanted to know how AI filtration is a little bit can be passed through that filtration and then get to the recruiter.
I don't think that we're there yet where it's mainstream for recruiters to be using AI in their workflow associated to sourcing and filtering resumes. It's starting, But despite what you hear
I think,
online,
yeah, in
that's
the
not
area,
the
it is
case.
very much. Most of the
Is it?
company, yes, totally. Like even consulting companies, interviews are in AI, first pass, and then going to the client.
I mean, just because they're using like Alex AI is an AI powered platform out in California that's done very well for themselves over the last year or so. And these guys, I know these guys' tools does some filtering for keywords, and then they do a lot of the AI interviews. But just because you're getting an interview request that's AI doesn't mean that the recruiter was filtering through AI. I think that from what I have seen from my personal experience. Um, I would make sure you've got the keywords in there. I would make sure that you have, I would make sure that your keywords are in the resume, clearly stated how you use the tools. And I would not worry about a filtering yet. I mean, when you look at ATSs, they do filtering. They always have. And and a lot of it's by keyword, depending on how the system is set up. I'm very much, this has not yet happened across the industry. I mean, are you seeing that in CA where these companies are also using AI to source, and is that verified?
Yes, even in the LinkedIn post, if you see the job position, we will be using AI to screen, but there will be final decision manual reviewing. But they post in their post
Well,
description.
that's very tough because it depends on how the tool is configured,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's really tough to speak on. But I would say the keywords. I would say I would focus on the keywords and making sure that you've got the tools and the languages that you need in there. And then I would couple that with reaching out to recruiters.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
I have one question. So the application should be reviewed like within the first 100 submissions, or is there any such number like that? Or how many resumes would you screen before you saying, okay, this is sufficient pool?
Well, that's another one that's every recruiting team operates differently. I know some folks operate first in, gets reviewed, and I know some that will open up a position, wait a week, and then we'll review all of the resumes. For me, how I operate, honestly, how I operate is I'll leave it open, and as I've got time, I'll look at candidates, and then usually after a couple days, I'll look at the entire suite. I'll pick, my top 6 or 12, and I'll go call them. My mindset is really like I'm looking for a right fit. As soon as I have a couple people I think would be a right fit, I'm going to halt my efforts and I'm going to work with those candidates to try to get them offers. But every recruiter works differently, so that's tough to answer.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I have one question since we were talking about ATS filtration. So recently, what I have experienced when I have been applying to these job postings, and I was using one AI software to cater my resume based on the job posting description and whatever keywords were listed there. But what I realized after using those AI softwares was that when I have created a resume, so I have a primary resume that has a more comprehensive version, and I just list out few things based on the job description to apply to that particular job posting. But what I realized while using this AI software, my impact-driven keywords were replaced with more of a task-based execution work, which on paper looked like very junior related work. However, I have 10 years of experience, so my resume needs to speak like I have 10 years of experience, which I would like to apply with. But just to match and to pass the ATS filter, it was changing it with the keywords which were more of a junior related work, which I was not happy about. But just to pass the ATS filter, we have to do that. But ultimately, it will go through the hiring manager and the recruiter because they also want to see the heavy work that comes with the experience, right? So there is a dilemma that keeps going on. How should we go about it? Should we focus more on ATS filtration, or should we keep the resume which speaks of our real work and experience, so it has more weight and it can help us stand out? How should we balance that? If you can answer that question.
I think it depends on what you're applying to. I think there, normally folks will have a couple staple resumes, and then as you go and look at jobs, you will likely change a bullet point to or here, right? And then you'll add it as a, subcategory of your resume, and you'll apply with that. I don't recommend like thinking about how to pass an ATS filter. I don't recommend thinking about how to pass the AI filter. I'm looking at the rec itself, which keep in mind, they're usually really canned. If you've ever seen a role that looks more like it's a manual automation and you get in the interview and it's a development role, well, that's a common theme that I've seen. So it all depends on also like, is the job description accurate? What I mainly pay attention to is when was the position released, just because I want to know when the rec was live. I just want that data. I want to be able to know who the recruiter is, and I want to be able to, I want to go and find a recruiter at the company. Like I said, I think outreach is really key here. But when I'm just looking at the resume, I'm looking at the requirements, and holistically, I'm thinking, well, what are the top 3 skills that they really need, and then is that portrayed well in my resume? And I'll go ahead and submit.
Understood.
That might not be the answer you're looking for. That's how I operate, though.
No, but I got an idea that how should I go about it. Thank you so much for answering that question.
Sure.
Hi, this is Annam. I would like to check. Firstly, thanks for all the insights and the very important questions put by the team over here. And is there any weightage that recruiters look on the certifications of that data? Does it really have the value added to the resumes? And at the same time, if we have multiple experiences, like I can say you have showed the case study as 9 years of experience. If the candidate has 20 plus years of experience and multiple projects in the different domains, so as you mentioned, I took the point like they will be looking for the first 7 years, but at the same time, if the current role is looking where this candidate has done 10 years past in his experience, so how can we formulate these things in this fashion, how you have guided us? Can you give me some insights on that?
I think you said, I think I get the context. Ask your question again, please?
Yeah. So my question is whenever the candidate has the certifications, does the recruiters take them into consideration? Yes, no? That is my first question.
Great. The first thing I'm thinking is does the recruiter understand the certification? What certification is it? Are we talking about? Is it the Java 8 certification? I'm a QA tester getting into automation. Well, that shows some object-oriented programming under my belt. Or is it, I'm a QA engineer and I've got a Scrum Master cert, but I'm going for automation roles, right? So I'm thinking about what's the certificate? What weight do I know it holds in the community? And do I know or not? And then what does the recruiter know about that cert? And, what's the company about? And on the job description, does it talk about any certifications? So I think it depends. I think we're going to see a shift for certifications and education, like schooling. And I think it's going to be real world experience and more project based, showcasing from a portfolio standpoint to generate these conversations and get, offers on the table. But my answer is, I think it's great. If you've got certifications, especially if they're aligned with what you're looking for, I would add them on your resume.
Thank you.
There are 2 questions from the group. So let's say there is a gap in the career for any person. Does recruiters consider that? The gap is good or okay? Like if there is any gap, does that recruiter, consider that as a no or not a best choice for that position?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the recruiter, but I think my answer for this a few years ago might be different than what it is today. Obviously, we're all aware about the current economy, so being out for 6 or 12 months, I don't necessarily think that is a deal breaker. I think what I will tell you, just the trend that I've seen is I'm sitting at Tech Systems, a big box staffing company. I'm sitting at Dexian, a multi-billion-dollar staffing firm. I'm sitting in a pit with 60 other recruiters looking at resumes. And what do I see? I see my peers looking at these resumes and pausing if they should call the candidate or not. I look over to my colleague and I say, "You'll pick up the phone." They say, "Well, I'm not sure. This person's been out for 6 months. I'm not sure what they're doing right now." And would our manager accept that? Could we sell that right? And this is coming from an outsourced staffing example, right? I'm not an internal recruiter, but internal recruiters have their own feet for selling their hiring managers on who's right for interviews. Telling your story, I think I would get ahead of any concerns that recruiters might have. So if I've been out for 6 or 12 months, I don't want to send my resume without adding some type of story or something that's personal to me to illustrate what I've been up to, because I don't want to give that person, the other person that's looking at my resume, an opportunity to make their own narrative about what I've been doing. I think that's, yeah.
Great. But how do I showcase that? Is it okay to call out in the resume that,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So look at this resume, for example. This person, they worked at Ally. They worked at Red Ventures. They started September of 2017. Looks like they worked at Garrettson March 2017. This woman was out for about 6 months or so. So it's a dated example, but this person took time. They were a manual tester, a manual manager, and they're moving to automation. And so while they're trying to bridge this gap and get roles at their role at Red Venture, right? It's, we've got a blurb here. I built a solid foundation in QA and project management. That's fantastic for anybody who has an opening where I need an automation engineer, but they're client facing, right? It's so clear this person can do that work. And I took intentional time off to deepen my automation skills and pivot into a more technical engineering focused role. So that's just one example of how you can craft, a story.
So
Hope that
can
helps.
we include like the certifications, what we did, the learning journey, what we
Yeah,
went through,
absolutely. Yeah.
and what kind of
Certifications,
AI projects we did?
100%. Your GitHub, anything to show, hey, anything that you want your audience to see. I would rather have, when I look at a resume and I'm looking at applying to a role, I'm looking to see, okay, what's this role? And then how do I compare? And if I've been out for 6 or 12 months, for example, as a recruiter, I was out of work last year. So I spent several months wading through the pond. And what I noticed is that if I'm out for a few months as a recruiter, they're wondering, at that time, they're wondering, well, are you a good sales rep, right? Et cetera. And so I crafted a story around what I was doing over the last few months being out, because I did not want my audience to make a decision for me on what I've done.
Great. I think we can proceed with the next one. There are no questions from the group.
Cool.
One question, what if there are multiple gaps, like say we are on job 1, then there is a 1 year of break, and then job 2, and after that there is a 1 year of break. How is that perceived?
I mean, might think that you're contracting or consulting. I might also think if you were working at full time, like you had layoffs or whatever. If you were working full time at say this person was working full time at Red Ventures and they were laid off due to reduction of force, then I might add in a blurb here at Red Ventures, right as I kind of did Ally below the software development engineer. I say, brought in to do X, ultimately left due to RIF. Something like this that tells the story, whether you're contracting on a 1-year contract, whether it's a full-time role and you just got, the short end of the stick, you go to a startup, they lose clients, right? 6-12 months later, you got the short end of the stick, you're looking again. I've personally been fired from positions before, and it's certainly not due to performance. So I think absolutely what I would do is if you've had shorter durations, I would add in that narrative and make it clear to your audience what you were doing and why the role ended.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
What about the long breaks, like you have taken like a 10 years gap and something like that? How will you address that? And
well, I mean, have you been out the last 10 years?
yeah.
I would look and see what were you doing I would look and see, I would list several things that you did personally over the last decade. I would list several things that you've done professionally over the last year to upskill yourself. And then I would look at your notes, and then I would say, what crafts a really keen story to say, hey, I had a kid, took time off to be with the family, over the last year or so, take a look at my GitHub repo. I think that's absolutely appropriate. I would add that story, make the story clear for the audience, and I would couple my applications with outreach.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any further questions, guys?
So I have one question, Jacqueline. So I think you mentioned to just highlight last 7 to 10 years of your experience in your resume. But how about, I think this is what Annam was asking. What about if the particular job requirement that they're looking is something that you work like 10 years prior? So how do we should we showcase that? Because anything past 10 years, I'm just putting as previous experience and just mentioning the company name. So in that case, should we really add those the work we did in that, because that's what the client is currently looking for? Or is it really they think that no, it's 10 years past, she worked on it, that it doesn't really help now? I just wanted to understand a little bit more.
I think the latter. Yeah, I think the latter of what you said. 10 years ago, what you were working on, whether it was a particular tool or a domain, right, has had advancements in the last decade. So I think it really goes. That one would really just boil down to like, what's the job, what's needed, what do they want, and who's my competition. But if I had, say, something that was 10 years dated and I've truncated that last, that the earlier part of my career, I come down here. If I did something super cool at Walt Disney or Johnson Control, where it was a particular piece of software or something that the current role requires, I might say Johnson Control, Senior QA Engineer, Feb 2012 to March 2013. And I might add a short blurb, 1 to 2 sentences of what the tool or whatever, what was I working on and how it compares to this role. Then what I might do is I might also say, figure out how I want to throw that in my professional summary to give call out and say, if you want to hear about that, right, toggle down.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions, guys. Hope some of this is helpful. Everybody operates differently. Find me a recruiter who makes blanket statements, and I'll show you a liar. So trying to help out as based on what I've seen in the market.
Yeah, one curiosity question for my community, because that is where everybody is lagging behind. I know you might have covered that kind of question-oriented answer already, but right now, as soon as I see one requirement, either it is in LinkedIn or Indeed or Dice or some other AI platform, yeah, without me tailoring that resume or catered that resume, matching with that particular job requirement, I won't even get calls generally. So, what is your best recommendation? Do I need to maintain only one set of resume, or do I need to keep modifying my resume for each and every job requirement? How can I really cope up in this situation? How many times I need to really modify? So this question, I think many of you guys must be going through at this moment, right? So what's your best recommendation for this kind of concern or curiosity or worry what we have? Because we are spending a lot of time applying for one position, if it is a full-time or contract. Submitting the resume itself is like a time-taking approach, more than an hour effort. Addressing questions. I see lots of thumbs up. I'm really happy because I'm speaking on behalf of everybody's concern or worries. So, what is the best approach or strategy as a candidate I need to follow to really survive in this market?
Yeah, I think that I see too many people tweaking resumes that they don't need to. And it's really tough because these jobs all also look the same. They're all canned. Half the time the recruiters I talk to don't even know. I spend a little time here, time there, updating my resume, having to apply. Then I have to pander to the recruiter just to get an interview with the hiring manager just to see what the heck this job is really about. It's nuts. So here's a couple trends. If you, depending on, I say, hey, you're applying to QA roles, QA, what kind of QA jobs, right? So what is your experience? What kind of roles are you applying to, and what are you seeing in the market? For example, if I was an automation engineer and I saw no automation roles in the market, then I might look at my resume and see what am I seeing in the market and what do I best compare myself to, and then I'm going to update it. But I think so when you really narrow down, you're seeing a couple different themes. If you're seeing a lot of companies are doing the following. They're either standing up their testing infrastructure, they are either doing a lot of automation performance and automation coverage. And a lot of companies are now adopting these AI-driven testing tools. And I see that from the front lines. And so what I would say is if you match 70% of the role, it's an automation engineer. It looks like it's a migration from Cypress to Playwright. You have that in your resume. That looks fine. I would go ahead and make the submit. And then I would go toggle to that company and go and look up some recruiters, add them on LinkedIn. And I think the real time that you want to update your resume is based off of the requirement. If it says things like, hey, I need a secret clearance, or hey, I need cybersecurity experience. These are common things where it's tougher. HIPAA compliance, right? A lot of hospitals and a lot of healthcare and hospitals. And the other one is obviously like AI-driven testing. And I can't tell you how many canned job descriptions I've seen where they want somebody who's used Cursor, Claude Code, and Copilot, making, MCPs, spinning up all these agents. And I see the job description, and then I talk to the hiring manager, and like they haven't even picked the tool suite that they're going to adapt to, right? It's nuts. So the one advice I would say is what's the buzzwords here? The main ones that I've seen are the hospital healthcare issues with the regulated environment, companies like Raytheon, or if you need secret clearance and stuff like that, and then AI-driven testing. So if I'm an automation engineer and I haven't had an opportunity to do this work professionally, totally appropriate. But I'm going to figure out how I want to bake in a project here so where I'll still come up on the keyword. I want to be able to showcase the project or what I know. And that's what I want to update, because I know that if I don't have any AI in my, experience on the resume, I'm probably getting beat out by candidates that, do. And the reality is I might be better for the role, but I'm not the one who's going to get that interview because you got somebody else that has Cursor, Copilot, and all these other buzzwords in there, right? How do you compete? You shouldn't really have to be up. Like when I was looking for work, obviously a recruiter and sales rep is different than QA, but my personal experience last year, I was in the job market for several months. And I really had a couple staple resumes. I had one that was more geared towards sales, and I had one that was more geared towards recruitment. And then the other thing I'd run across is it looks like this role's more junior, so should I dumb my resume down? Or this looks more senior, should I redo the parts of my resume? But what I would say is if I'm finding so many roles where I have to completely re-update my resume and it takes me a lot of time, I'm probably trying to take a step back and see what kind of recs am I even applying to? What are the trends that I'm seeing here to collect data, and go from there. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes, definitely. But the follow-up question came in let's say I tailor my resume, and I keep applying for multiple openings. For example, in Google itself, I do see, because I have my catered resume in different flavors, one for the sales, one for the, recruiter kind. And I am applying for Google for the same kind of positions as well. Like as a Jacqueline, you applied for sales position as well as you applied for recruiter position. Does that get duplicated because you're applying from the same account, but different, roles completely? How does it impact typically?
I mean, I've seen this as a toss-up from outsourced staffing. I've seen, people that have different resumes, and you're looking in and you're wondering, oh, what's fake or real or whatever, right? I think this most simplistic way to answer this is I only care about the title and I care about the work, the tenure, right? So for example, if I see one resume that's more geared towards automation IC work, right? They're an independent contributor. It's a mid-level role. And I'm really looking to see not just the meat of the resume. Oh, here's a resume that's more of an IC, and here's more of a tech lead. Well, what did you really do? Well, the reality is you probably did both, And so really what I'm looking at is I'm looking to see do the client names match? Do the dates match, right? What is your LinkedIn? Then I might say, well, shoot, I'm going to toggle to your LinkedIn profile. What does that tell me? I wouldn't necessarily be worried about submitting multiple versions as long as the holistic picture is there.
In one flavor of the resume.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because like, I the only experience that I have is working with outsourced staffing, working with my recruiting pit, and people being confused as to why somebody was a project manager one day at Ally Financial and the next they were, or an automation engineer over at LPL Financial, right? But if you have the same, if everything else is the same and you're just tweaking it for the job, then I wouldn't worry about that.
Does I need to match my LinkedIn? Let's say that I have tailored my resume for a specific project or for a specific role. It could be full time or it could be contract. But how do I really keep matching my LinkedIn for it? Because LinkedIn is a mandatory requirement for many of the recruiters for any position. They do check whether we are a real person or not, all that. So how do we keep up on that particular activity?
Well, I mean, how many different jobs are you submitting to? Is one day you're submitting to a manual job, the next day you're submitting to an automation engineer role? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, most of the times, we will have a mixed experience. I'm sorry, guys. I'm asking all these questions on behalf of everybody because these are
Yeah.
the generic questions which I get normally, even as an individual, I get to, get into the confusion mode most of the times. So I am applying for, it could be a combination of automation and manual, but in some other requirement, it is like a program management or a project management with a quality background or some kind of background where I might have done that kind of work in my previous roles, but I'm highlighting myself as a quality engineer in one particular resume, as a program manager in another particular resume. But at the end of the day, I do have mixed experience. So
I would figure out a way to highlight both the managerial project resource management as well as your IC experience on the LinkedIn itself. That's a fair question. It is really tough because you have multiple versions of the resume, but you got only one LinkedIn portfolio, if you will. I think at that point I would tell you, well, what do you want? What's your competition look like? What kind of jobs do I think you have the best fit for and the best chances of competing against your competition, right? And then I would tailor your LinkedIn profile for that and try to sprinkle in some managerial type of work so it looks like it reads more of like a technical leader, but at some point you're going to have to make a decision. You cannot sit here applying for a bunch of manual roles and have your profile as automation and as pure automation. Just like, I wouldn't have somebody that's an automation engineer. This resume here, for example, this person has to pick. Do they want to be more at the managerial level, project management and within QA, or do they want to, look more automation, senior lead, principal level, whatever you want. But if you are applying and spreading yourself so thin, you've only got one portfolio to work with, you're going to have to figure out what makes the most sense.
Got it.
Jacqueline, just to add to that, I have a question that's relevant to what Gautami was asking. So I come from a 15 years background with in various roles, right? But most of the roles were all relating to project coordination. So it's a PMO related role that I come from. And right now, when I say 15 years and I'm applying for a project manager role, I do get asked a couple of times. I mean, it's when I'm talking to a friend who referred me, they say that you're overqualified for the position because they ask for 3 to 5 years of experience, project management experience, whereas I go beyond that. And one is that, so if my resume is stating 15 years, but I have been into a core project management, a leadership role for just 4 years, there's a mismatch with how I have to look for roles too. And now with the current market trend, I'm okay to settle down for something lower because I see that project management requires 5 years of minimum experience. Or if I'm looking for a project management role, then they're asking for a 5 years minimum requirement. And I've been a project manager for 4 years. But earlier to that, I have been associated with project management, but in different level and different,
Yep.
capacity, right? So where do I fit myself? Do I go in as a project coordinator? Because if I go as a project coordinator, I'll be overqualified. If I go as a project manager, then I'm underqualified. Then where do I see myself? I mean, everything is definitely associated and related.
Yeah, and it's really crappy because it doesn't it's not your job, but it's now your problem because you're trying to overcome both challenges. And the irony is not lost on me. You've got one that you're overqualified for. You got the other one you're getting beat out by your comp that has quote unquote more tenure. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, that's right. So yeah.
Yep.
Because I need to still pass that recruiter screening, right? So if I have to pass that recruiter screening, they're going to look at my profile which says 15 years in project management, and they're going to just, they're not going to pick my resume thinking that I'm going to be overqualified for a 5-year requirement that they are looking for.
Yeah, and it's funny because just a couple of years ago, I had so many managers hire overqualified candidates and not look at junior candidates. It's really interesting to see how the recruiting has evolved over the years. Here's what I would tell you: I would look and see what you want, and then what kind of job openings you're seeing. I think that at some point, it's like I said, not your job but your problem. So you're going to have to pick: do you want to be on the court? Do you want to represent your LinkedIn on the coordination or the project manager side? And then you're going to have those other resumes, and you're going to have to look and see you're going to have to try to talk to recruiters and see what are the biases here. I don't know enough about project management and project coordination to give you any friendly amendments in terms of how those recruiters think about stuff. But definitely, I think either side of the coin is going to be tough. But you only have at the end of the day one LinkedIn to market yourself. So I would really encourage you to look and see what roles you're seeing and where you think you'd best fit. Make a staple resume, highlight your LinkedIn as the marketing tool behind that. And then I would start reaching out to recruiters and trying to have conversations, man. That's really tough spot.
Yeah. I have been sending cold emails to recruiters, but not many recruiters do accept my connection request. I have been on LinkedIn Premium so that I get to send some note before I send in a connection request, but that's not really helping to have a connection established as well.
Well, I would love to have you copy and paste one of the LinkedIn messages you have sent so I can see what kind of messages you are sending to people.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Hey, Jacqueline, I have one more question. To know the pulse of the recruiters, do you guys, I mean to say, I'm not pointing to you, but overall, so do you guys take the placeholders? For example, if there is one requirement coming in from your client and you float that job position to the market, and probably what is your sense or what is your role, picking up all the resumes and keeping some as a placeholders? Is it the fashion that the recruiters will play? Because why I'm asking this question, I faced one instance I applied long back, but after course of time, like 1 quarter, I got a call that which I have applied back in 3 months back. So does this game was played like in a placeholder game was played by the recruiters? If I'm using some words, excuse me for that.
No, you're good. And I was wondering what you meant by placeholder. I don't know if you applied full-time to a company or if it was through a staffing firm, but probably what happened is they had your resume on file, they closed the other position, they opened something new, and the first thing they thought of, instead of going and sourcing new profiles, they'll probably look and see, well, what's in my database? Who's already applied that I think is worth my time now? And that's probably how you caught that call. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. But usually, does the recruiters do the placeholder work like this? Do they keep the placeholders?
You mean like, do they open fake jobs to get candidates?
Yeah, even though the position is not closed, but still, do they keep the placeholders or a couple of resumes in their DB?
Yeah, I mean, like if we're talking about open roles, a lot of the times we'll be advised to open positions, even if we already have a couple people identified, even if a couple people are already halfway through the process. We're looking to add pipelines. It's not necessarily collecting data to do anything more with it than, hey, if these people don't go through and get offers on the final round, I need to be able to quickly call other people. So is it fake? Well, it depends on how you want to look at it, right? It's not fake because I'm hiring for it. However, if you're applying to a position where I already have candidates in the interview process, you're behind the 8 ball. So you might not get contacted. And then I closed that role down. I got a position that's very similar a few months later. The first thing I think of is, who are the other people that applied to that I didn't get time to talk with? And then I'm reaching out to you.
Thank you.
There is a question in the group. Well, is there any specific websites that you can recommend for job search for the QA folks?
Well, that's what I was kind of hoping to learn from you guys. I usually use LinkedIn, and I'll do Google, and I'll look up companies. I'll curate lists for companies in my local area. Even if I'm looking for remote, I found that, people are more open to helping local people. Don't ask me why. So I normally start locally. I get a list of companies, and then I'll go through the companies, and regardless if they're hiring, I'm going to add people on LinkedIn. And I'm adding recruiters, technical IT recruiters, if I'm a QA engineer, and I'm probably also adding, engineering managers as well on LinkedIn. I'm not adding a note. I'm adding them without a note. If I add them with a note, it requires the other party to have to read my message. That takes time. So I'm asking somebody already to read my message. And that might sound stupid, and that's an opinion, but the reality is people multitask on this platform. I'm eating lunch, taking a call, and I'm looking through my messages to see, what do people want? Who should I respond to, right? If I send no note, then it's a no-brainer that if I'm a QA recruiter sourcing for QA candidates, of course I'm accepting somebody that's a QA engineer in the community, even if I don't have an open rec, right? It's a no-brainer. I don't have to think about it. And then at that point, I'm going to then reach out to them. I think there might have been another part of that, but
Okay. Well,
One question sorry to cut you. So if we are looking for the new jobs and we are done with the current project, is it an ideal to showcase open to work on the LinkedIn? How does it reflect?
everybody talks about this stuff. I'll beeline to the green banner because I want to know who's looking. I have other recruiting peers that I talk to that say, no, the green banner means that you're desperate. I'm not looking at those people, but that mentality is just like saying, hey, if you're such a good automation engineer, you should be able to craft a good resume. That sounds stupid. So that's, it's the same process. It's the same mindset for the green. For me personally, I keep it on, shows that you're looking. A lot of recruiters, they don't like that. So, I think you kind of roll the dice, and it goes down to how the person is sourcing for work, how the person is sourcing. You can put yourself open to work without showcasing the green banner.
Thank you. Appreciate.
Yeah.
Well, there are two more questions. I know we passed the time. I'm not sure whether you still have bandwidth to address some more questions.
I've cleared my calendar. I'm free.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So let's say a candidate has a 20 years of experience as an estate or test architect, and that person wanted to change the role by learning new technology. Is there any specific suggestion you have to modify the resume and LinkedIn for this particular cause? Like if I wanted to call out as a different role apart from estate or test architect.
I mean, what else am I looking to do?
Yeah, Shashireka, do you have any
Yeah,
specific role in your mind?
yeah, I'm thinking of learning some ETL tools and switching to ETL programming or business analyst, something like that.
Okay. So I'm not the ETL guru in terms of where you'd go to get the courses or the workshops under your belt. I don't know. But if I am you and I've got an SDET career and I'm looking to shift gears to ETL, I'm probably learning a little bit, going on ChatGPT and saying, here's what I've learned. What kind of projects can you recommend I do? Get some ideas just right, and then I'm going and doing a project, and then I'm going to showcase it on my LinkedIn, and I'm going to showcase it on the resume, probably between my professional summary and my professional experience.
Got it. Yeah, I just wanted to see how the recruiter's opinion when a person see after so many years suddenly putting as an ETL, applying for a ETL requirement.
I think if you match, if you can paint the picture as to how you match the requirement, I don't see that being an issue, especially since SSTAT is hot and has been for years. Folks are interested in looking at you for SSTAT Recs, and get them on the phone and tell them you're not interested in their role and you want ETL stuff. But I think if you paint the picture on why to call you, you've got a good chance. You've got a better chance of getting called. I don't see anything wrong with career shifts. You see that happening all the time. This resume that we just took a look at, she was a manual tester for a number of years, a PTM, and she moved into development. And I think how she did it is there's updated bullet points here to see the career shift, but then she also just did projects, and then she added that stuff on her LinkedIn, and she, started doing outreach. So.
Right. And one last question here. How do I stand out as a unique profile if it is a QA role? I know every requirement is different. And if as a recruiter, if you want me to be selected, my profile to be selected, then how do I really highlight my experience in a different way or a unique way?
Yeah, I would look at this resume makeover thing and I would look at the before or after. I focus on the objective section. I focus on the meat of the bullet points here. And am I really showing like why was I brought in, right? What was my chair for, and the impact that I made? And that'll immediately help you stand out. I think at the end of the day, you could be the best SSTAT, you could have the best SSTAT. This could be the best SSTAT resume that I've seen. But if I'm hiring for like a PTM, I'm probably not even calling this person, even though they have PTM experience, because I'm looking for a project test manager, not looking for an automation engineer. So it depends on how you match the role. So I think instead of focusing on on external factors you can't control, I focus on what you can, which is how do recruiters view resumes? How technical are these recruiters? What do I know about how they view stuff and what they think, what they know about my skill set? And how can I paint a picture that is unique to others? I have candidate C here, but I've also got candidate B and A, and I can share that with the QA access, so you can see like the type of resumes that I'm seeing in 100 application portal.
Okay, wonderful. I think all the questions have been addressed well. Is there any specific tips extra that you could give it to our community, Jacqueline? Is there any specific topic that you need to still cover? Because I know we are asking a lot of questions. I'm not sure whether you have covered what you were thinking to cover today as per the topic.
So I put in anybody that's not free can go ahead and drop, but I put this in. I basically gave a recap of the conversation I was having here on my blog. If you want to take a look, the other piece that it covers is really the sourcing component. I think I had some folks say, hey, I've reaching out to recruiters and I'm not getting any feedback. So thanks, Jacqueline, for the friendly amendment. I'm already doing that though. What am I doing wrong? So this blog goes through it. And I think there's one other thing that I can probably show you here. When I'm looking at cutting through the noise and I'm saying, hey, I'm reaching out to the recruiter, right? Like I'm adding people on LinkedIn without a note. Try it. Let me know if you're getting stuck and I'll spend time with you one-on-one and we can make some calls together. But here, I think it's really important before you look at notes to look and see how are people reaching out. So I get about 5 to 10 messages every day. My boss, Owen, gets about double. And I don't know if you can see my screen here.
Yep, we can.
I can probably share this afterwards. It's on my LinkedIn page. So don't look at the bottom part. The bottom part shows you how I reach out and catch people's attention. Obviously, I'm selling stuff, so it's different than your outreach, right? But take a look at the top part. They say, hi, Jacqueline, came across your profile. This is my experience. I'm exploring opportunities. Hey, Jacqueline, I'd like to learn more about your company. Are you free for a virtual coffee? I'm exploring opportunities in QA and PTM roles. If you're hiring, I'm open to connecting. I'm a senior engineer. Hey, my name is this, although your name is on your forehead, right? So to speak, because it's on your LinkedIn, right? So this is the kind of stuff that I get, 5 to 10 a day. If I'm not on LinkedIn for a couple of days, I'm bogged down with like 30 messages, right? On top of all the other work. So if people are here on this forum telling me, well, thanks, Jacqueline, I am reaching out though, and I'm not having any luck, then I'll let you know if this is one of you, if this is how you're approaching people, then that's probably why. When I look at outreach, I'm looking for one thing, and it's to get acknowledgement. I can't make you do anything for me. I don't even know if you're the right point of contact. What's your priorities? What reason would you have to acknowledge me? And so normally when I reach out to people, I keep it short and sweet. I cut the pleasantries. I don't even say their name sometimes. I just say hi exclamation. I don't say my name because it's written right on my LinkedIn profile. I'm not telling people, the background that I have or anything like that. I'm either doing one of two things. One is I'm making a statement and I'm throwing myself on their radar, such as, hey, Kristen, ran across your information applying to Adobe X role. Like, do you oversee this role, or am I barking up the wrong tree? Or if the recruiter's listed or it's very clear this is probably the recruiter over the role, it could be something like, hey, I add them, do not add a note. When they accept you, you go reach out to them. Hi, exclamation, like ran across your information applying to X gig. Like, love your recruiting background. Are you still looking for quality engineering talent, or are you all squared away? Something that's different than the rest of the messages, so where you're confident that this person acknowledged you, right? Sometimes I'll even look at my LinkedIn to see who's viewed me if I can see it on basic LinkedIn permissions. But I'm looking to cut through the noise. I'm looking for a low request that's very easy for somebody to come back to me and say like, hey, we're all set. How easy was that, right? I can then scratch that off my list. So I think outreach is extremely important. I think when you're looking at, the other thing I note is when I'm looking at positions, for example, I do, automation engineer in Charlotte. I'll come in here and, you got people, posts, job groups, companies. I'm going to post. Like, I want to see who's in my neck of the woods talking about gigs. So I got Inside Peak, which is me here. I've got an IT staffer. Looks like they've got an urgent requirement in Charlotte with our client SMBC. Holy cow. I'm probably going to take a note of that, and I'm probably going to do a search on here saying recruiter and SMBC, or QA manager and SMBC, because now I think that SMBC is hiring. Shoot, that's a good lead for me. But I'm toggling down here. Here's another person that posted stuff. Here's a guy that works at TD Bank who has posted about his team. Interested, DM me. I'm definitely adding that guy on LinkedIn without a note. As soon as he accepts me, I'm reaching out and saying something to either ask a question or throw myself on his radar. Look at Chris. He's a senior recruiter he's a senior recruiter IT over at the Hartford. That's great. I'm probably adding him on LinkedIn, and I'm doing the same thing. So I think when you look at jobs, I think it's very clear to look at your overall sourcing strategy. And that goes outside of just, hey, how am I finding what rec is open in my neck of the woods or whatever, right? It's a complete pipeline. But I don't look at just what's open. I look at who's talking, whether it's a recruiter I can talk to, whether it's a QA lead reposting something for their team, right? Whether it's like interesting tidbits that I'm seeing in the market based off candidate experiences or requisitions that have common trends, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think those are really I think all of that's critical. And I think now more than ever, it's going to be building networks and seeing how we can cut through the noise to have more conversations on the board. So not sure. I'm not sure if this is helpful. You guys asked me a plethora of quality questions, and it's really, and I'm very modest, and I don't like to put my foot in my mouth. And I understand that all recruiters operate all different types of ways. So all I can talk about is my own experience working with my teams, as well as what I've seen my colleagues do. But like I said in the beginning, if you find someone that's doing the hot takes and shit,
Okay.
But that was basically it. And then if you go into my blog, I basically blogged all this stuff, so you can take a look and see how I break stuff down.
Okay, sounds great. And for all of you here, this recording will be posted in QNX's YouTube page. We will share this particular YouTube link, after this session, probably today, end of the day, or tomorrow, with a thank you post in LinkedIn for Jacqueline. So please wait and then stay tuned. But here, one of the volunteers from QNX has had a request to Jacqueline. Yvonne, do you want to talk about it?
What is it?
For each of the resume file, whatever you're going to share on, ABC files, what you have. Yvonne, can you please speak up?
Oh, sure. My question was, request, is that whether for each resume we could have a short blurb, like what you took away from the resume, your thoughts or notes on a brief few sentences on what you took away from that resume so that we can understand your mindset in terms of evaluating that specific data point.
I think that's super sweet. And you're talking about like candidate C here, for example. Is this the resume that you're talking about? Like, how does Jacqueline think about when she's looking through a pile of resumes? What's the takeaway, or am I off base?
Yeah, when you come to that candidacy or whichever other files you're going to give us, that particular resume, when you find that resume and you're reading through it, like, what do you take away from that resume?
Yeah. Yep. Let me collect my thoughts here. Let me use my morning sourcing to go through, and I'll do twofold. One is let me look through the pile of resumes, see what trends I'm seeing, see how as I'm a recruiter, how am I thinking about this stuff in a way that you guys might not recognize, right? Let me put all that together, and I can send that over. I can send that over to the Nexus team in a note, and then I can also talk about what I think a quality resume looks like and the takeaways that I have on that as well.
Sure, we'll try our best to send these attachments to the registered, and typically the attendees over here, we had around 53 people joined, so we will be sending to all of those guys who joined today.
Yeah, great.
Wonderful. I think this is a very great session in this current market. I really appreciate all your time and energy for our community, Jacqueline. This is really valuable inputs what we got today out of curiosity, questions, concerns, confusions, how to reach out, what to do, what not to do. So everything you covered well. I really appreciate all the time. And for the audience who joined today, who is not aware of QA and Access, please follow the page. By that, you'll get more and more insights on this kind of interactive sessions, not just on the QA perspective, much more actually based on the latest trend in the market. So I really appreciate all your time for joining today, and I hope everybody got some benefits from this call. And I wish you all the best for your job hunt if you're into the market.
So I'm having one takeaway from this call is like up to me personally is like what I like is the Q&A session is not at the end. It is on go, through
Yep.
go, the
Yeah.
session. So I liked it very much, even though I have attended multiple town halls, whatever not. But I like this session because of that on taking the question on the go and getting the answer so that no need of keeping all the
People
uh,
in need.
no, the questions accumulating in our mind and not concentrating on what the topic is going on. So they sometimes we are very curious to ask our question and we'll be waiting for that in the last. But this is very helpful. And once we, as in man, intellectually, I'm telling that our question is answered, and then we are ready to take up then our what I can say is we can concentrate on the upcoming tasks or upcoming discussions. So I like very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
QNXS and Jacqueline.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to hear the feedback. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, me too. You know, I'm just thinking about the last hour and a half conversation, and you guys threw a lot of questions out to me. There's no one straight answer. God, I wish there was. All I can tell you is the job search process is just a game. And what's the point of playing a game if you don't know the rules? So I think a lot of folks brought questions up that I don't really think about when I look at the AI or the ATS filter and stuff. But some questions were really interesting, centered around what's the competency of the recruiters? How do recruiters think? Right, wrong, and different. I need to know how the recruiter views stuff and what they think so that I understand how to play the game so that I can get conversations on my board as I'm climbing up the ladder to get offers. So I think the only other thing I can throw out, we had well less than 100 people. Like, if anybody wants to send, I don't know how you want to do this, so I'll let you kind of take the wheel on this, but over the weekend, I've got a couple hours to anybody that's been sitting here with me. If you guys have resumes that you want me to take a look at, I'm not going to do them for you, but what I can do, somebody brought up a really good question earlier, is I can take a look at your resume. I'll put on my generic recruiter hat and I'll scratch some chicken notes on each resume and tell you just what I think about it. What I say might be dumb. What I say is not accurate, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the psychology around how recruiters think, which I think is key. So happy to do something like that. And then if other people have questions centered around outreach, right, they want to send me other questions, like, as long as this is done over the next day, then I can spend Sunday and turn around answers, on Monday to the Nexus team. Yeah, especially if you've got outreaches. If you've got outreaches to recruiters where you're not getting feedback and you are actually pairing your application with outreach, I want to see your outreach, dude. And let's recraft some generic templates that we can sling out to folks and see if we can't get more traction. Again, I do hands-on workshops, so I think that if this was valuable, great, and if not, my bad. But for future conversations, I would be interested in doing some live recruiting sessions centered around actually applying to roles or calling people or doing wherever you guys are getting stuck in the process. Yeah.
Great. So, well, thank you, folks. And let me share the LinkedIn for QNXS as well as Jacqueline one more time to connect. Please do follow our page, and anything we could help. If you have specific interest and specific topic to be covered, please do let us know. I'll try my best to get the possible speakers for that session, and we might host more and more this kind of recruiting sessions. If Jacqueline has more thoughts, more ideas, happy to host her one more time, where we could get a lot of questions to be clarified.
Good deal.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy weekend.
Happy Friday. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.